Hey everyone, good afternoon. I figured I would do just an end of day stream because we're already pretty much done for the day. I'll just copy paste the notes from this morning. So I did a stream yesterday in Discord. And this is kind of all we had left for the day. It looks like, so 70-17 was a really calculated range along with like 70-19 for this week, just because they had the 8 points in reduction. And these were my mocks from yesterday. What I mean by that is when they took it down to 3-5 versus trying to hold closer to 4-4. So we figured that there could be maybe a tiny reduction, not a massive one. And then it was crucial to sustain above 4952, which they did do, and they held really nicely above that 54, 58 area overnight last night. Those were our first major overheads to start the week. But this reduction here is partially why I figured maybe they don't give us the full ranges here to like 70-32 or 70-28. Maybe they stall closer to these ranges here. So these are kind of just the reductions that I had noted for end of week, at least for real time. So 70-19 has, for me personally, the most confluence, but like this area here, because that's more aligned with that reduction. But so far they're stalling that 70-17. We'll have to see if they clear here. I figured if they don't clear during the 324, 330, 336 period, we could look to see if they delay through the final 10 or 15. And that could be the case if there's only, you know, a few points left in range. Does that make sense? Like if they only really have 2 or 3 points left to work with, they probably won't move range too much during this period, especially if they already stalled 17. So we'll see what they end up doing, but those were my thoughts. As much as I wanted 70-28 this week, I feel like odds are not super high. The only way that they can maybe get that is because of the fact that they held 5-4 and 5-8 last night. So there was no return back to this 4-4, 4-3 area. But that being said, they'd probably have to clear 17 and 19 before 355 or by 355. All right, so what do you guys think in terms of max range? This was also really good PA today. So overnight was really good in terms of where they closed. I had mentioned that we needed to close at least above 6-6. Yesterday's wasn't recorded because it was just on Discord, but the reason why it had to be above 6-6 was because those were the, I think the 33, 34 point ranges, and that was kind of the area that gets us back to put us at those probabilities. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, those were the 22 and 34 point ranges. So we needed to close at least above 6-6. Ideally closer to 7-1, which they did do. The area was close to like 7-2. Nice, Vincy. I'm so proud of you. Try to be more active again in real time because I feel like it helps some of you. But if you guys listen and just pay attention to price action, honestly, you'll make great trades on your own. Do you know what I mean? Like if you pay attention to our areas this week, like 6-9-3-8, right? 3-4, 4-4, 5-4, 5-8. These are the big spots, right? Like, and look at where they held. And then we have our 7-1, 7-2, 6-6 where they closed. And we already know that sustainment of 6-8 or 6-9-9-9 was crucial. So even this morning when they came and tested the zone and then stalled, I was like, this is one reason why, too, guys, they might take us to core, because they did open in a core area, right? So they opened at 6970.25. But the first tag right here of 6999, excuse me. And then when they brought it back down, I noticed they held above that 7275. But more importantly, when they took out 7006, they tagged 7010, and then they held 6999. This was a really good area this afternoon, guys, to confirm that they would take it higher. Was when they they held right here. Okay, obviously the 5-8 holds here too. This right here, even though 5-4 holds is good, like sustaining over 5-8 would have been a tiny bit better. So this is, even though they closed above, this is euro. Maybe this would be interesting to you. This could be one reason why they're stalling 19 so far. Okay, is because of that little tiny breach, because 5-8 is a little bit more aligned with our 19 spot. So that could be partially why. But Vinci, I'm really proud of you. But yeah, this was the second best spot to take along if you missed this area earlier, or this area, or even if you remember yesterday I said you could take a long off 4-4 back in here, or 4-8 or 5-2. Like these were good areas to take long for Friday. I said maybe not for today's session, but for Friday, so that way you have some time to work with. So these reductions, I know I saw your comment like earlier when you said you had covered half when like they stalled 9-9. That wasn't a bad move, because obviously we had like the early morning volatility and we still hadn't tested like 5-8 or whatnot. But had they held, let's say 6-6-6-7 here and then took out 9-9 or 8-8 right here, we wouldn't have had this reversal, I don't think. Like this is also another reason why they might have reduced range a little bit, like just on a wider scale. Like this was almost 32 points in range, so which is probably close to that 70-19 spot. Do you see it? So again, some more confluence around 70-19, and that could be why they're capping us there. They should be more aligned with the 70-30, 70-32, like top of the zone. And then this should be around the top of the channel. These areas here, I would imagine during imbalance prints, are probably just closer to the core ranges, like near 70-24. So whatever I had said this morning, this was my second comment. So my max range being those areas closer to 17-19, but due to those reductions, and you can see those exact reductions in real time today too, but if like they're happening, this was at 6:44 my time before market open, but I could tell that was going to be the case just based off yesterday's price action. But even in real time today, look, like when they reduced this here, installed 8-8, okay, even this here when they broke it back beneath 8-8, okay, like these areas here, these could definitely count as some slight reductions in range. Price got more constructive once they held 9-9, and now they definitely need to start holding closer above this 70-12, 70-13 spot that I was mentioning. Here, do you guys see that? Kind of where they stalled earlier. 70-14 is top of the. How come there's no 70-14 in here? I redid this, but oh, there should be the 60. Okay, let me turn off this then. Hold on. So save, because that looks, because that's a neutral zone here. Yeah, I think if they hold neutral range here, then it would be a little bit more constructive. So far, they're breaching it a little bit. But we did have more odds this week to end neutral, considering we started neutral. So what do you guys think? Give me give me your max range for the close. Do you think that market has odds of getting back to 7017, 7019 here into the close? Do you think that they could tag 7021, 22? Do you think that there's any probability that they can get 7028? I think 7028 for real time is definitely off the table. Like I've said that a few times today, but this price action's confirming that for me. Even this 3-6 hold right here, like you see how they tried holding 7014 but then couldn't retrace it back? This would be the final window to try retracting back this range here. So let's see what happens. How did you guys trade today? Majority of you. So if they want any odds of this getting a retest, I do think that they have to try getting back over 14 and then retagging this area here during that 350 to 355 period. Otherwise they'll keep this stuck in a neutral zone, which is fine too. The market doesn't owe us above these neutral areas, right? So yeah, I really wanted ES to tag 7019, but we'll see. 7016 is 7017 is pretty huge too. Yeah, if you're green, that's good. We could maybe start setting some 70, 14. Based on what they did after 336, I'm leaning that way too, especially with how this is acting at 347, 48. Because I would have preferred that they held above 13 and 14, but the thing is because it's only 2 points, that could be why they're killing as much time as possible, because they don't have too much room left, so they might have to stall a bit just to save that range for the final 10 minutes or something. But 17 is also enough to be a max range for the week, so I wouldn't be surprised if they stall there either. And these were the areas that we looked at yesterday too for getting it back here. These are, in case you guys forgot, can you guys see my center screen or no? These are the 107 point ranges, okay, off weekly open. So, and we already hit 107 points yesterday, so we're working with core ratios. So even though these are neutral levels, these are still core ratios. Does that make sense? Same with the 690504. Those were still core ratios. So that's why I'm thinking they could stall here. And I think when we looked at this off weekly open, this is exactly what I drew yesterday. These should be like the 100. Oh yeah, that's so close. Do you see that? 107 points would be 60 or 70, 18.5. So, and that's off opening range. Off lows, we've already hit 118 points. So 115, 112, like these are core ratios. Off last week's or Friday's lows for the year so far, that's 150.75. What's 150.75? That's the half ratio of 256 or 256, and 346 is 150.5. So they're kind of working with mid-range. I didn't think that we could get 128, 133 points. See, like if we got full range, that would have given us 128, 133 points, which I definitely don't think that they're going to do that anymore for this week after where they opened. But Anyway, okay. That was just a reminder so you guys know why those ranges were calculated. So even this 350 stick right here, I'm not surprised, honestly, because they kept it beneath 7014, and these ranges are enough to be considered max range for the week. So these were the core ratios off weekly open, weekly lows, weekly close. Its only final odds of turnaround would be around here. They had better odds though around 70, 14, 15, so I would prefer that they try closing there because that would be the 107 point range versus staying stuck between 70.08 or 70.10, but we'll have to see if they turn it around at 354. That would be the final point in the day to give us a turnaround. Yeah, they're getting super close. I think they just hit that 8-point range. Yeah, they did. Do you see that? Do you guys see those 8.5 point reductions? It's pretty obvious. Look at this. And this, like right into the last 30 minutes. So I would say if they fail this area here, because that's the 8.25, 8.5 area, then they really reduce odds of getting a retest or tagging back over 7014. For the session too, I'm not just talking about real time. And it makes sense that they would be back testing this just ahead of that 354.55 period, because this would be the final point in time for them to try turning things back around if they wanted to. Did most of you guys cover when I said to off 7014, 7016, 7017? Like I only left a few runners just in case they get that break in the last half, but it seemed more likely that we were limited based on what they did around 324, 330, 336. Yeah, maybe. I'm thinking that those could be the ranges that we see for next week, especially because next week is also approaching like close to mid-month. But hey, at least we got this week right. Like a lot of people were super bearish heading into this week after that candle. And I was like, This is exactly what we drew yesterday too. This is the exact mock that we drew happening for today. So this played out, this worked out really well. And we also knew that we could get stuck, but yeah, this star-like reversal is exactly what we wanted to see. And this right here, this is literally what I drew yesterday. You guys see that? That's exactly what played out. I had a feeling they'd stop close to 70, 17, 19. So try to study this over the weekend, guys and girls, because this worked out really nicely. And this is really calculated too and puts us in a really good position for next week. Let's just see if they can at least try holding over these ranges here. 55 getting a reduction stick down beneath 70.09 is probably not the best case, because now I think we're a little bit below 103 from weekly open. Yeah, we are. From weekly lows, I think we're just around that 107. So I would say minimum would be that 70.06, guys, which isn't that aligned with the previous high anyway? Isn't that where the previous high was? Where was that previous high? Yeah, it was 70.06. So I would prefer to close over 70.06, to be honest. Like, I really want to close closer to 70.12, 70.13, 14. But closing here is also fine. They would just have some pressure for Sunday. Yeah, I traded Google yesterday. Or the day before. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. But I didn't trade it today. I don't know. I feel like they'll try holding because this is a pretty big spot right here, like around this area here. I would prefer that they try holding this spot and pinning closer to here, but we'll see. I think that they'd probably need back over that 70.09 before 59. Like, they'd probably have to retrace back over here. I still want the 70.14 pin, but I feel like now I'm just kind of stretching that. Unless we get like a crazy last minute stick or something. Oh, they're trying to get it back over the 70.09, so that's good. I would think that this needs at least over like 70.10 or 12 though. Maybe I'm not crazy. What do you guys think? Where do you think they're going to pin it? Technically, the minimum is 70.06 that we need. Ideally, over 70.09. I would have preferred closer to 13.14, but what do you guys think? I feel like they need way more pressure than that to have gotten that. Maybe like after the close though. Usually you can tell within like the first like 30-second interval too. Like if they start turning around. Like you see when it hit like 30 seconds how it tested 06. Had that wanted to test upside, it would have cleared over 08 and then broke 09. And then they also saved this risk too for the final minute, so. Can you guys also make sure, please, to resub on Twitch if you're not already? Because the Prime memberships fall off, and I haven't been streaming on Twitch for a while now, but I feel like most probably fell off. Look at that reduction stick. If they had turned that around over, like if 7 or 358 had closed over 09, like I was saying, and that 0925, and they had cleared this in the last 30 seconds, there was a pretty decent probability. How many points was that? 5.5? That we could have gotten. Oh yeah, do you see that? That 70.14 close. So it wasn't completely out of the question, but we failed to meet those conditions. So, and this is a really good way, guys, of testing and seeing odds of probability for price action. So like I was saying, like my condition was if they break back over here and close over here, then they would give us an odd of getting back to here. So I don't think it was entirely off the table, but then you can see the exact range off that 359 stick. If they had done the inverse, closed above, opened above, there was definitely some odds they could have taken it to 70.14. So hopefully they can pin the actual session at least above 70.06 though. Oh my, thank you so much, Smos, for all the gifts and subs. I appreciate you. Yeah, that confirmed it, Euro, when they couldn't close over 09 before 59. Or even clear 09 within the first 15 to 30 seconds of that 359 stick. because that was the initial reduction that we had off those highs, right? Like that 8.5, 8.25. So breaking that would cause some extensions down. We'll see where they end the week into session close. I still would want them to get it back over 70.06 preferably. And then we'll set some conditions for Sunday. But I think you guys have a good idea. Like, you can set your own conditions for Sunday too, because it's pretty obvious that if you want to have a nice clean week, you'd want like a nice gap over, you know, 70.17, 70.19, to tag those 70.28. Technically speaking, we don't even need those areas to get constructive PA, since these are core ratios. These neutral levels are aligned with core ratios. So even opening around 70.09, 70.14 would still be good for us. And it's pretty obvious that if we took it back beneath 6.999, then we'd be at some risk, right? So I think that's pretty straightforward PA heading into next week. So I think the Sunday report should be fairly straightforward, to be honest with you. And we hit exact max ranges for the week. 70.17, 70.19 had the most confluence. And the reason I figured that 70.17 would make a bit more sense for this is, we'll just do one last recap, is due to that reduction in range that we had, but also the fact that these were closely aligned with the core ratios off opening range. Okay, so like closer to like 106, 107 point ratios, 103. Okay, these were more aligned with those spots there off last week's open and close, or Friday's close. This area here around 70.16 was a little bit closer to that 115 point ratio. Okay, so here, do you see that? That's exactly, just so you guys can see, because this is what I was measuring off of. Okay, and that's exactly where they stalled, 70.17.50. So 115.5, and just in case you guys are not aware, that's a core area, but it's also what? What is that spot? And we've been using these ratios quite a bit because 115 is a max core range, but it's also something else. What else is 115.5 or 115.25? This is my final question, guys, before I sign off, so try to answer that. What is 115.5? It's one of our core ratios. It's also great alignment with that 173 points if using that 58 point metric that we've been using a lot recently. And it's also our increments of thirds, right? That's a third of 346 points. Okay. One last thing too is when I was looking at the lows here versus like open close, like, you know, we measured the 346 point ratios here. When I looked at these areas too, like off the actual opening range, you see how there's a lot more alignment there with this. So this is more aligned with an open close versus high to lows, which is why you can measure here. But if you're measuring off the actual lows that occurred, okay, we already hit these ratios back in here. Do you see that? Like, they already hit these 107, 110, 113 point ratios back here. And now you'd be like kind of aiming towards breaking over 132, 133 points. And last time we broke, it was exactly 133.75 or 134 points. Like, this was on the report from like 2 weeks ago. So maybe just go back and double check that, like off those lows and specifically off of here. But now they're hitting like close to that 150.75, which is the half range of 256 and 346. And to me, that makes sense because we're super close to hitting 256 points. Do you guys see that? So now this is when you start trading between both 256 and 346 point ranges, and the math aligns too. Or you can think of it as like a third of 346. So that would be maybe getting to there, and then this would be the equivalent of like that 222. Do you see it? Isn't that crazy? Look, you guys, that's insane. That 222 and a half and 256 off this would be the exact same thing. Isn't that interesting? And thank you guys for the hype train. And since this one here was off increments of thirds, I just want to see if the 346 off here. And that would be like this equivalent of the expansion range of like 380. Okay. Just something for you guys to study this weekend in terms of our ratios. I feel like these are really calculated spots. So, and it's a really good way of you guys understanding why those ranges were calculated. Plus, even off like these closing points too. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but you see how these are still working within those core ratios. Like this is still 74 points from this close. Okay, 73 points from here, or 73. Do you see that? Okay. And I think we had preferred like closer to 66, 68 point ratios too off these open close ratios, since that would get us closer to 70-11, 70-12. And off yesterday's lows, this is still closing over 66, 68 points. So, and this is still a 34 point break from yesterday's close, and still 33, 34 points. I think the 33, 34 points from today's open is 70.06, 70.08. So another reason why it would be preferred that they close there. And then from today's open to today's highs, they hit exactly 44 points. So there's just a lot of confluence with that. Okay, so that's another way that you can look at this too, if you want to look at it from the smaller metrics, like for these intraday, because this is what could get us, you know, like an 88 point break or something like that, or an additional 66 points. They should be aligned to our 70-41 at 66, 68. And like this is assuming that they close here, ideally, like above 70.06. Does that make sense? 70.06 is linked with that 70.38, 70.41. There's a lot of confluence around there. Needs a new higher high to makes an equal all-time high. Yeah, I have a like so 70.28 to 70.41.48. That could be an area of like if they hit the channel, like we're looking around here, this area here. That area can trigger volatility this time, and also from like a structural perspective too, like the way that this structure looks. I drew this maybe like a month ago or something, but from like a structural perspective, like the way that these lows and highs are being situated, right? And the fact that they left some room back there, like they can obviously take this a bit higher. Okay, that's why I'm like thinking that, okay, maybe from this range here, but then this range here, if you like measure from this actual candle, okay, to like the gapping ranges or something like that, most of these align with this area here. So they could go a bit higher, but I feel like this would catch people off guard if it did. Like if this is maybe where they could initially stall. Do you see that? Like off of this range right here to here. So when you're measuring, try measuring off the actual candles that had those reversals, and they should align with our flip dates anyway. Okay, so like this being So kind of like this area in here. Let me just draw this, okay? So like this, here, 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 okay? You see how they close below here? Soon as they, and then they just tagged here but then stalled. Soon as you get an opening or closing price above here, which would make sense because that would be above like 70, 31, 32. Like that takes you above the zone right here. That's how we could maybe push a tiny bit more, I think. These should align with our 70-20s that we just looked at too. Hold on. I just want you guys to see the full picture, okay? Because I feel like a lot of people are missing like the bigger picture with this, but okay, maybe like closer to, from an open close ratio, maybe closer to here. Okay, do you see that? If they get some structural breaks right here, this is how they could trigger that second zone, okay? So I agree, but I'm not going to rush to that, like, thesis that it would happen immediately, right? Like, because there is a chance they could push this another 100 points. Because when you break a zone and enter a channel, what does that suggest? My whole theory is what? And this is so crazy that it aligns with these areas too. Because look, when you're drawing this, look at where these spots align. Specifically, if you're working off these areas here. Do you see the alignment in range? What area, guys, triggers a new 100 points? And these probably going to be the same thing as like the 256 point ratios. I just want you guys to see the confluence here. Yeah, but usually when you close a zone or enter a new zone, right? If you exit a new zone, you have odds of entering a new zone, right? That's where your 100 points begin. So a lot of confluence here is like within the top of the zone at 70.33 and then the channel at 70.44. So I agree, but we have to be very, very cautious between 70.38, 41, 44 because they could push it to 70-100s first before they decide whether or not they want to actually bring this back down. Does that make sense? And even when we looked at it in terms of like the 346 point ranges here, like these areas here, okay, like we had a lot of confluence around those 7200s, which kind of like off a gap range that you can see the confluence right here, right? I'm measuring from here to the gap. So I know the 7100s have a lot of confluence, but do you see that? And we already know that the next time around, if they test 6868, 6871, 72, we're in trouble, right? Because what is this area aligned with? And we already know this. This is our 346 points in range, right? So retesting here puts you at risk of 6,488, 6,512, 6,518, 6,522. And the crazy thing is we held a little bit higher here. So we have room to go a tiny bit lower, right? So this should align with the zone. Do you see that? That's crazy. Look. So the crazy thing is they could take out this low, make a lower low, and then still break back up. From a math perspective, it would make sense because we had room to 65, 12, 18 back then, but they held a bit higher. And that would be the same thing as this megaphone if they, you know, broke down, okay, broke back up, okay, broke back down, broke back up. This is the part where I feel like, because they held 346 points here, but breached slightly, this was kind of neutral. This is the area that I think is going to cause the most confliction for the market, okay? Because it's whether or not they want to, excuse me, continue fully here or come back down. And the move could be steeper because there's that alignment with 6,488, 6,512. Because we had room to trigger that last time and we held above. I talked about this like a few weeks ago, or like last week or the week before. You guys remember this? How we still had room back down to here. I think it's actually recorded, this one, so, or it's on the report or something, but in case you guys forgot, those were the really calculated areas that are linked with these spots here. And you can also go back, and this is our critical support for the year, you can also go back and study from back in October. Okay, I'll just copy this. That was my notes from October, and that played out pretty well. So we can just keep recycling the exact same things, because technically when they held 6, 5, 18, this is all in Discord, but anyway, it's all there. And the only thing that would negate that, are you guys okay with me copying and pasting? The only thing that would negate that is holding that 695258 area, which is exactly what they're doing right now. So that's one reason why we had really good odds of retracing that upside. So, and then the median spots in between are like 6696, 6698. So if they did something where like they broke it back down, but then didn't want to fully break down or something, you know, they could, or like maybe they want to play around or go sideways, they could take out this low and this one, but maybe hold here. Okay, and that sometimes when that happens, and then maybe if they fail 68.99 or fail to get back into this zone right here, that's when they could see like the steeper move. These are just some mocks in case they do stall here. Okay, obviously a bullish scenario would be that they just take out this range. Okay, and continue. That would be a pretty big bullish sweep if they did something like that. But usually if that happens, the volatility is pretty steep. Okay, so 70.41, 70.38, 71.28 to 34, those are going to be really big areas of confluence for us that we're going to be paying super close attention to over the next few weeks, especially since these areas could, they're aligned enough to bring us back down if they really wanted to, especially since they left some room here for us that we can afford, which is good sometimes in the event of going back up, which in that case it was, but also scary in the sense that that means that they could head back there. And that's actually on this week's report too, if you guys go back and read it. Okay, I'm going to sign off for the day. Thanks, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, sorry, Sunday. Forgot it's Friday.